So if you've been tuning in, we took a look last time at Ford's reveal trailer for the Transit Trail, which looked a little bit like this. Now obviously that's a little bit ambiguous of a teaser. We didn't get a lot of information from it, and we did have a lot of speculation. But now they've released the information for the trail, so we're gonna take a look. And one thing we want to look at is if it's actually worth it, or if you're just better off buying a regular Transit and maybe ordering the all-wheel drive version of it. So before we get into the costs of the actual platform, let's take a look at what the drivetrain is for the vehicle. This is like what the engine is, transmission, all-wheel drive, not. So at first glance, you can see that there's a 3.5 liter V6 gasoline engine. Now I'm a little surprised they went with a gasser, but they probably did this to keep it cheaper. Us personally, we like diesels. We would much rather be buying into a diesel than a gas or electric. But I'm honestly kind of surprised that there's no diesel variant of this or a full electric. I think that Vanlifers, like new Vanlifers who want to get into it, who maybe aren't doing it full time but doing it on most weekends, they might want something that's full electric, just because honestly it's trendy right now and people think it's a really good thing for the environment, so they're probably going to go that direction. Now they did go with the gasser, which we're a little surprised about, but it's not too bad because it comes along with a 10-speed automatic transmission. I know this doesn't mean a lot to most people, but 10 speeds is a lot. It's great on the highway, and also they're marketing this trail to be obviously a trail go-getter. And 10 speeds is great on the trail because you can go down to a very specific gear and you can be crawling along on hard roads in a particular gear that makes it a little bit easier. Now it isn't automatic, you don't have to worry about shifting, anything like that, but it also has some dynamic modes, which is kind of cool. I'm sure there's stuff like for sand or for gravel or stuff like that. They're kind of things that new vehicles are doing to make their drivetrain easier to drive. Let us know in the comments what you guys think about the Transit Trail. Do you like that it's a gasser? Do you want it to be electric? Do you want it to be a diesel? Do you want it to be a longer wheelbase? Make sure to comment below. Now, one thing I noticed in the literature for the specifications is that it houses 2 AGM batteries. Now, my guess is that one battery is for the engine and another battery is for the actual use of the vehicle as a van life vehicle. But I'm guessing that second battery is for use. And I'm guessing it's for that use because they've also included a 400-watt charger on board. So you can plug in your regular household 120 volt into it. Another thing they're really trying to capitalize on the trail is they've released that they're including 30.5-inch tires. So those are a lot bigger than something you'd say get on our Dodge here. Those ones are probably 27 or 28 inch. The bigger the tire, you'll be able to go into more rugged places. It'll make it easier to drive. And obviously along with that, an all-wheel drive system that they're releasing with the trail will go get you even further. I mean, we've taken our rear wheel, two-wheel drive Dodge in some crazy places, but I'm sure you can go much further in an all-wheel drive Transit for sure. Now, if we take a look at the actual aesthetic of the platform, it looks like a Transit, but obviously they've added a few things to change it up. Like we saw in the teaser, you've got these clearance lights up front. They've obviously changed the bumper up. They put fender flares along the wheel wells to make it look a little bit more off-roady. And the other thing I've noticed that they've just released is they're going to be doing side steps. It's not a lot taller of a vehicle, but I know most people like to have side steps to get in their vehicle. The fact that they're including these from factory, they're obviously trying to make it look a little bit more like an overlanding or off-road rig. So let's take a look at some of the features that they're actually introducing to this. Now, from a first glance, you might be like, oh, are they, building these out with the interior built out from factory? Now, that's not the case. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh, maybe they're gonna be having, specific panels on the inside to make it easier for building. It doesn't really seem that way. I think it's still just a cargo van. It's empty from purchase on the inside. They've stated that they've tried to make it a little bit easier to build in. I don't know how true that is. All vehicles are hard to build in. But the other thing I've noticed is on their site, they've included a Max Airfan photo on top, and they're kind of stating that this comes from purchase. So I don't know if they partnered with Max Airfans, but they're shipping them out with purchase, which is interesting. So there you go, that tells you a lot about what their market is, and that is Vanlife. Another thing they're stating is that someone who's 6'5" could stand comfortably on the inside of the van. Now I'm 6'6", and I can say, even in the tallest vans we've been in, I can't stand comfortably ever. I don't know if the 6'5" specification that they're giving includes an insulated floor and ceiling. Who knows, but I'm kind of taking that with a grain of salt. That might just be empty cargo space height. But they are saying that they've made it a little bit bigger. And I think the specs for the wheel length is about 148 inch wheel length so far. Now, I'm not gonna get into all the specifics about all the goodies it came with, say like the rear backup camera, the side cameras, the 360 view, all that sort of thing. I'm not gonna get into that because it's not really super important for van life. They're just nice things to have in any vehicle. But one thing that I thought was worth noting was the Wi-Fi hotspot that they're trying to push on this vehicle. And I honestly think that's a great idea. I mean, most newer vehicles have an option to be a Wi-Fi hotspot. I'm sure you plug in a plan to the cellular network and then you can be using it as a hotspot. But I think in this case for the Transit Trail and it being for van lifers, that's a great idea. Especially if people want to be weekend van lifers and they don't want to have to, buy Starlink like we did, where you have to move your Starlink with you or pay to move it, or it's kind of a lot to set up. So having a cellular network that can then hotspot off when you're, say, down by the beach and you want to hang out. And they're also mentioning that it can go about 50 feet outside your vehicle. So even if you're a little bit further away from your vehicle, you can still access your hotspot. So let's talk about cost. So the base price of the Transit Trail is about 65,000 US. So for us Canadians, that's about 86,000 Canadian dollars. Depending on who you are, who you talk to, that's a lot of money or that's pretty reasonable for the vehicle. In our honest opinion, I think that's a lot of money for, extra fender flares, an extra battery, and all-wheel drive. It all depends on who you talk to and what they want to use it for. I think that the general market will probably want this vehicle because it's something new and it has a different looking trim and van life is very trendy right now. I think that it probably will do pretty well, and I think that other manufacturers will come along with them and follow their lead. Now that being said, what's our honest opinion about it? Now I haven't been in touch with it in person. I've only been able to see in videos and read articles and read straight from Ford about it. But in my honest opinion, I think it's a really great idea that a big manufacturer is delving straight into van life head on and specifically saying this is built for van lifers. I think that's a really great idea, and it's gonna really change the van life market in the next few years, especially if other manufacturers come along. Now, would I buy it? Personally, I would not buy it. We are a little bit more into a longer wheelbase and diesel for our needs, but that's just our needs. Other people might want the shorter wheelbase and something more of a weekender that looks cool straight from the factory. So I think it's a really great idea. I wouldn't personally be getting into it, but I'm really excited for what the Ford Transit Trail brings to the rest of van life in the coming years. That's it for this week's video. Make sure you go and take a look at some of our van tours that we did of the Transit, specifically this one, which is actually an all-wheel drive Ford Transit that I can almost stand up in. It's an absolutely beautiful build. And make sure you're subscribed for the best of van life content. And until next week, safe travels.